Well, welcome to Worldwide Slot Car Chat. I'm your idiot host in this case. And we got everybody here, Courtney and Brian, maybe. I don't see him, but he's never been mentioned much. So Garth is here. John.
I love you, Mike. I love you, Mike.
Everybody. Oh, good. Brian's here. Anyway, this is Worldwide Slot Car Chat number 138, and I'm sort of the host, I guess.
You're Ed McMahon. You're Ed McMahon.
Yeah, right.
As long as she's not Vince
I don't think
McMahon,
I'm even
but-
good as a sidekick, believe me, especially with computer stuff. So let's start out with show and tell. And I've got one, but if anybody else has one, just go in turn, I guess. Garth, as long as I see you there.
All right, I got a. Greg made me a couple of triggers for my Professor Motor controllers, 3D printed triggers, and I've got a little show and tell.
Cool.
To show for it. And of course, the one time when Greg's not going to be on here is when I got a bunch of stuff that I like to talk to Greg about, but and that's the way it always goes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let me just get rid of this guy here. Okay, here we go. Ready? You guys got that?
It's
see that?
working. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. This is on the left is the can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Does it sound okay? All right. This is the original Professor Motor trigger, okay, that I took out of my controller. This is the 3D printed version that Greg printed for me. Okay, and you'll see it's very similar with all the mechanics and everything. And that's another shot of it. Okay. The shot of it on the opposite side. Okay. And I guess this was supposed to be for two-fingered operation. Okay. And I haven't done a lot of testing on it yet, but I'm done a little bit of track testing a little bit, so I need to talk to Greg about some of the ins and outs of that, but here's another shot of it. There's a shot of the end. This is more for Greg than anybody else. The one thing that I noticed about the print was on the very end, okay, of the trigger, the Professor Motor version, which is on the right here, had a little 45-degree angle on it, okay? And at first I thought that it had some kind of purpose, but subsequently I've kind of found out that it really doesn't do much of anything. I think it's even a mistake on their half. I think it should have been on this side because there's a little U-shaped clip that fits on here, but it doesn't fit on that side that they got the 45s on, okay? I think it actually should have been on this side. It doesn't harm the trigger in any way, but so it was omitted from the 3D printed thing, and I didn't even notice it until after I had already installed the trigger and everything, so it didn't bother me at all. These shots are more for Greg than anybody else. That's another shot. You can see the little 45s on the original trigger. Here's the a shot of the Professor Motor controller with the original trigger, and this is with the 3D printed version. Okay, that's a little bit close-up shot. You can see that this part of the trigger is almost identical to that part of the trigger. So the idea is to be able to two-finger trigger it. Okay, there's the opposite side here. Anybody got any questions or anything?
Is that your preferred method to do two-finger?
Actually, no. And that's kind of what I was going to talk to Greg about. And I'll talk about that at the end here when I get through all the photos, because I have some questions for people about one finger versus two. And so I've got some construction photos here. And one thing I noticed on the 3D printed version was my Professor Motor controllers had this little copper shaped insert, okay, like a ferrule in that hole there, okay. And so that's one thing I had to make a little change on the 3D printed thing. I had to drill this out for that ferrule, okay. Although I don't know what the ferrule does or anything, it would probably
it probably stops the plastic from being worn away, Garth.
Yeah, it does, but I think you could actually, even if you didn't have that in the thing, it would, you know, but I was a little worried about it. So, and when I put this thing together, it was kind of an experiment putting it together. I was scared to death that I was going to destroy my Professor Motor controller, but so I ended up drilling that out a little bit, okay, and that's another better shot of it here. You can see that little thing there. That was the only thing I did to the 3D printed trigger at all was I cleaned up these faces with some really fine sandpaper. The parts of the trigger that you pull with your fingers and stuff, took some of the flashing off, and other than that, I just drilled this little hole out and then I just assembled it like it was normally in the original controller, okay. And that's another little close-up shot, and you see that that's a 3D printed thing, and it seemed to, so far it seems to work just as fine. I didn't screw it up, and I was really worried that I was going to destroy the damn thing, but I didn't break any solder joints or anything, and I put it all back together and it was all fine. That's a shot of the end of it, okay, showing the shot. And that's it. And the question that I had about it, and anybody can answer this question, is now my experiments that I've been doing with it, I am used to a Professor Motor controller, and I use my middle finger, okay, on the trigger exclusively. I never really change fingers or anything. That's kind of the way I've always done it. Sort of the same thing that I used to do on the old Parma controllers. And then when I got this guy here, I just did this yesterday. So I was racing the car around the track a little bit, and I was goofing around with, 2 fingers. And I tried these 2 fingers first, and I said, nah, that ain't gonna work. And then the only 2-finger method that I sort of was okay with was this finger and this finger, okay, on the 2 fingers. But the one that I kind of defaulted to was using my normal middle finger, index or long finger, okay, on the second half of the new 3D trigger. Instead of having it high up on the trigger, I had it low up on the trigger, and that seemed to be my favorite position. Although I got to say that I haven't had a lot of time with it, and I have a friend that we're gonna torture test them, and I just want to know what people think about how they handle 2 fingers versus 1 finger, or what they prefer, or what, just any thoughts on that.
Give me a moment, I'll ask the wife.
Hey, this is a family show.
Well, it's a personal preference, in my opinion. I like the index finger. I find it quicker than any others.
The index finger?
That's
See, for me, that must be British, because that's like,
My experience has been with an index finger, you need a longer travel. With your middle finger, you have a shorter, quicker travel, because you press the controller further down on the finger. Then with an index finger, you tend to use the top joint of the finger.
yeah.
With a middle finger, you tend to use the middle joint more. And so what I find is when I'm running like 1/32 scale cars, or things that need a really fine control like retro cars, I'll run with an index finger. When I'm running those steel flexi cars and things that you really need very, very fast reaction and a shorter stroke, then I'll run with the middle finger.
So do it two different ways then, right?
Yeah, I haven't, I've tried running with both fingers, and I have a couple of friends who do that. And they say that it's more comfortable because these two fingers bend together really nicely, and they tend
The
to
first two
move.
fingers?
The first two, yeah, index and middle finger. But
Yeah.
I've tried that, and it didn't work for me.
It didn't work for me. I'm gonna keep trying it, but it didn't work for me either. Actually, the second and third worked better for me. And
Yeah, I
I think
haven't
that's
tried
because,
that. But
I
I
think
know a
that's
couple of
because
guys
I-
who do race like that. Yeah.
yeah, I think I put my index finger on the back of the Professor
Yeah,
Motor
mhm.
controller like this.
Yeah.
And so having the second finger either right in the original version slot or even in the second slot, so.
Yeah, the thing with the Professor motor controllers, if you're running with your middle finger, your hand has to be really high up on the controller to grab the stock trigger. So those sharp edges at the back tend to press into your into between your thumb and your forefinger.
I've heard people say that, but I've never had a problem with it.
Okay.
I've
But
been
yeah,
using-
maybe you got the right idea to move it to move your middle finger down to the next level, and that will give you effectively a slightly longer stroke, which will probably relate to more control. So it might be your best way to do it.
Yeah, I've got a true speed controller here. And you can see the difference in the two configurations. It's a much straighter, I think, than the Professor Motor one. One of the
So
guys
is that a two-finger one, Mike, or is that
the top, this one is a two-finger one, the red one.
do you do two
This
fingers
is the
when you-
single
when you
finger.
drive with it?
I've drive with one finger.
Okay. Index finger?
Yeah,
You
I
must be
prefer that.
British like Wayne then, eh?
Well, not so much that the track I've got is pretty convoluted, and you need these, adjustments really fine. And as Dennis said, I find it works better. I've tried working with the middle finger, but it doesn't seem to work for me very well. I don't have as much control. I have little enough control as it is, so I need to maximize my abilities as much as I can.
I find with the middle finger when you're in a situation like those big bank tracks and things, where you really don't need that fine control, but you need to be able to move it quickly and over a short distance, that the middle finger works a little better. I started doing it because my index finger just got so bad at one stage. The joints are getting so sore from the arthritis that I have that I needed to teach myself to do something different. And then after a while, that joint started to give trouble. So I had to go back to the original one. And now I kind of swap between them depending on what kind of car I'm using.
Of course, another option is to try the index finger on the long portion of the control. So you've got quite a long throw and therefore quite a high resolution.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, move it down further down. Yeah. Are you in bed, Wayne? Looks like it.
No, I'm still outside a party. My child's inside there. Only I've got my Sprigger Holly and my hood up because it's cold, very cold.
Yeah, I see that. You look like an elf on a shelf out there.
Yeah, I'm a naughty one. Just wait and see what I've done when you wake up.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
really.
And I see Phil's in bed.
Sleeping.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, anybody else got show and tell?
Yeah, I have, but there's other guys in the
Okay.
queue ahead of me.
Hey, Dennis, it's bloody 6 o'clock in the morning here, mate. You don't expect me to be out of bed yet, do you?
No, that's fine.
And I'm still
Morning,
getting
Phil.
over Dennis's COVID as well, so that's not helping.
Oh dear, yeah. I see
So-
Tony Petrucci's got his hand up.
Evening all.
It's interesting. I don't see him. I don't have a big enough screen.
Okay, yeah, Tony's up next.
Evening.
Okay, Tony, go ahead.
I've had a visit from Santa Claus this morning. He said
Oh,
he'd
wow.
come early because he won't be able to make it on the 25th. And he's dropped off some stuff.
Uh-huh.
There's 1, 2.
SRC Toyota.
Yeah. Is that the 19 or the 919?
No,
Or is that
that's
the
Toyota
Can you feature it, Tony, Mike?
TAO10.
Actually, I don't know how. I was trying to figure out how to do it, but I haven't succeeded yet.
Mike, you're doing a wonderful job.
No, can't see it where it comes from. So we'll have to carry on as he is. So what else have you got, Tony? Oh, the Mercedes.
That's the slotted C-Class Mercedes
Yeah, the
ETM.
new one. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
The Camel.
Have you
Very
run it
nice
yet?
car, by the way. Oh, more than one.
Another one.
Oh yeah. Cool.
Running partners.
Eh?
Two
Why
Mercedes
two?
running partners. An Alpha, is that?
Yeah.
Looks like
That's
the
the
Alpha,
Alpha.
yeah.
Do you already own a few slotted DTMs, Tony?
Sorry?
Do you already run a few slotted DTMs?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
They run real
Those
nice.
at the club?
Oh, the Avant slot BMW 2002. Mhm.
Is that the BRM one,
That's the
or
Avant
is that
slot.
the Revo slot one?
No, that's
No, I don't
Avant
think the
slot.
That's a Revo slot. Are they?
No,
They
The Avant slot.
it's Avant slot.
oh, Avant slot.
Or Avant slot. Okay, it's the original body molds were from Spirit, but I think they've redone the chassis a little bit. They look very nice, but they're rally versions because they have two drivers in, or they have two little figures inside.
What's that one, Tony? Can't see that
That's
one.
the Golf.
That's Gulf BMW.
One's Golf and one's Camel.
Yeah. Have you run them yet, Tony?
No, I haven't run them yet.
They arrived today.
Arrived today, yes.
Oh,
And they're still in the
Santa
box.
Claus said he can't make it on Christmas Eve, so he delivered it today. Woke me up very early this morning.
Cool.
cool.
Nice.
Okay, who's next?
I think
Dennis,
it's
you
me.
want to go?
Chris, guys like Chris Walker and Christer Bergström from Sweden are not on the line today, but Christer has been talking to me in the background about building him a chassis. So I just thought it's finished. So I just thought I'd pick up a couple of photographs. He sent me, or he said he wanted a chassis from around about the 1975 era, 1/24 scale. So I built this, which is a copy, roughly, of a design that Tony P. or Tony Pribilovich, or whatever his long name, lots of
Parabolics.
consonants. Sorry.
Yeah, you're right. Tony
Something
P.
like that. But anyway, Tony P. He was one of the great builders in the early days, and a great builder of retro cars later in his life. Passed away a year or so back, unfortunately, or earlier this year, unfortunately. Anyway, so I built this for Christer, top and bottom. The big deal about this is that right here there's a hinge, right? This piece that you see, the brass that you see in the middle with the guide tongue on the front, is actually attached to the back of the car, and then the rails that go forward to hold the front axle are actually hinged on this big hinge that goes across the middle of the frame, and so that the front wheels actually can lift and ride independently of the guide. What we used to call an isofulcrum, similar to what Cox made for their La Cucarachas. That's the underneath of it. And then I actually finished it up. I found an old C-can motor and some orange tires and some old Sonic bronze gears and the right kind of front wheels. And so that's the car. It's on its way. It will be on its way later on today to Sweden. Unfortunately, the guys, you know, Krista himself's not on, and Chris Walker, who's the other guy, probably remember these cars. Isn't on either today. Jim, did you ever run things like this? Don't think so.
Yeah, once or twice, but not really.
Mm-hmm. I think I showed you this one at the Enduro, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's mine for the day. Nothing much else going on here.
Cool. All right, anybody else?
Okay, Dewan's ready.
What's that?
Dewann?
Yeah, I can do a quick little show and tell. Boy.
Sorry, Dewann, I can't help you today.
Yeah, no, not a problem. These are some old vintage cars that I decided to just kind of come up with, because when I get around to my little racing, I usually provide all the cars and stuff. So I like to try to have everything somewhat on an equal basis. So I have these 4 retro 124, well, not retro, they're vintage 124
Revell.
Yeah. So
Ferrari Super Squalor.
Yeah, so I have one that's kind of complete that needs a little touch up. The other 3 need the exhaust pipes, and 2 of them need the windshields, as you can probably see from those. So I'm gonna get those all cleaned up and have them ready for a little IROC type racing. But we keep the same car in the same lane and just let everybody rotate through them and make it even up that way.
Mm-hmm.
And see that. That's just the
Nice.
one is pretty complete.
Neat.
And that was custom painted. You can see it was originally a gray car that they I think it only came in the 2 colors of gray and red. And so they just took one of them and kind of painted it up. I got this off of eBay about a month or so ago. And then all the decals, I want to go ahead and get those replaced and spoofed up and cleaned up. And then I want to do the same thing for my those small 132s. I think I have about a couple dozen of these, but I'm going to probably do about less than a dozen of them. Get them all spoofed up and
Mercedes to a Ferrari, a Corvette, and an Aston Martin.
yes, 2
Nice,
Aston Martins.
nice.
Yeah. So I have about 2 dozen of these floating around.
And which ones? The ones with the ladder chassis or the ones with the single piece chassis? Or both?
These are the single piece chassis.
Okay.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. What you call? What was the first one? A ladder.
I call them the ladder chassis, the adjustable one.
No, these aren't adjustables. These aren't.
Okay, so these are the single piece aluminum chassis.
Yes.
Actually, I think sometimes those work better than the adjustable ones.
The adjustable ones, I think we're in the latter part of the 60s.
Yeah, they were later.
Yeah, and they're using for the muscle cars and things like that. So I have some of those as well.
And the ladder chassis were the real bend-o-matics. They would bend if you looked at them wrong. Yeah. Certainly for I remember running them on the commercial track that was close to my house in South Africa back in the day, and any hard whack, and the whole thing was bent. The brass chassis from Monogram were a lot better for that.
Yeah, so
but the bodies were excellent. They really did a nice job on them.
Yeah, they look decent.
Yeah, just go ahead and...
By the time we're done, they'll look even more decent, right?
Absolutely, that's what I'm trying to do.
And Dewann and I have an agreement going on this. I'm going to be doing some of the restorations for him.
Cool.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
Are you gonna paint him and stuff too, Dennis? Or
well, it'll depend on what he wants. But one of the things that I think really works well on these old ones, you clean up the outside. You probably leave the color the way that it is on the outside. Put new stickers on, but take out the interior and paint the interior so that so that it has a painted driver and
Right,
it's black or gray or something inside, and then they really pop. They look great after that.
yeah, that would be great. That would actually be great. I can see that the interior on this red one right here. I have to go look at it a little bit closer. I don't know what that green stuff is.
Somebody's been trying to paint something in there by the looks of it.
So I'll have to take a closer look at that.
Either
now.
that or it's dirt, one of the two.
Is that a rear motor car or front motor?
No, they're all rear. They're inline, but the motor's at the back. And so the interiors are all just basically flat interiors with like the driver sitting in a puddle of oil, you know.
Mm-hmm. My preference.
Okay, and that's pretty much it. My goal is to have back in the day type races. So I'm gonna use the old vintage cars. We'll use some of the old controllers versus the new controllers.
Yeah,
I even use some of the competition controllers. Just to mix it up a bit and just have everyone.
It's fun.
Yeah. So
I remember doing that on my track one day, giving the guys old monogram cars to run and old Cox controllers.
Yeah.
And the very first thing everybody tried to do was to run their
index finger,
to run the thumb controller with their index finger. So I banned that immediately, and they had to go back to the thumb. And it took some of them a long time. Some of the guys had actually never driven a slot car with a thumb controller.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So that's the concept.
Excellent.
Okay. That's all I have.
Looking forward to that.
Stop share button here. I can't get to it. I'll just point it that way.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. Got it. All right. Anybody else got a show and tell?
Nope.
Hearing none.
I have one.
Courtney has.
Oh, okay. Courtney has one.
I don't do a lot of show and tell, but Michael, a couple weeks ago we talked about that Benneton, the stickers.
Yeah.
And I didn't cut them out individually. I actually cut them kind of down the middle, and I took the right side of the paper and put it on the left side of the car, and it actually came out really good.
Oh, wow. Nice idea.
I changed
That's
a couple
really
stickers,
cool looking
but
car.
it came out way better than
the Atalaya decals.
Yeah, Atalaya. So anyhow,
they are really, really nice decals, those.
And if anybody's curious, I bought the lightweight front wheels and tires for that thing. They're terrible. I haven't trued them up yet, but they're not anywhere close to round to be ready to race.
Okay.
Anyhow, that's all.
They're different wheels as well as different tires.
Yeah, they're plastic.
Oh, okay.
So I was trying to find the stock front end. I had to take the stock tires off, and I built a proxy car. So I bought I couldn't find the stock front tires. So I found the lightweight front end. So I ended up buying, so it's a plastic wheel and a little different tire. It's just not a very good fit, but it is light. I didn't measure it, but it is light.
That's NSR, correct?
That's all NSR, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, good. Okay, is that the last of it now? Well, I just lost the wing on my show and tell. It's in here somewhere in this mess, but here is mine. The new Aston Martin from Sideways with a bad faux pas in the middle there. You notice the hot glue on the chassis right there?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's because the hole for the chip managed when I drilled it, I foolishly used a drill instead of generally drilling with a pin vise and broke the chassis out. So I've got to get a new chassis for it. It's on the video for my channel this week, finishing 2 or 3 laps behind. It doesn't handle quite as well on my track as the some of the other ones, the Lamborghini Huracan and the some of the other ones that I've got. The Ford GT of Sideways is a little bit better, but anyway, it's a
Interesting,
beautiful.
because I found it the other way around.
Yeah, I was surprised, but you know, since I've got the chassis not right, that may contribute. So I did change the tires on it. I put slotted G25s, 1172 G25s on it, and they have better traction on my track than the original tires that come with them.
They're also a bit bigger, so that might have lifted the rear of the car a little.
Well, you know what? I don't think so. But anyway, I ran it almost straight out of the box after I put the chip in. I put the chip in Monday when we ran it, and was just barely finishing up, hence my hurried screw up there. And but it still was pretty decent. It's a little bit slidey at the back. I haven't put any weight in it at all. Weight distribution was 63-37, which is a little bit rearward more than normal, so that could have contributed to it. I tried to drop a 2.5 gram weight, but that was too much, and I didn't want to screw around with it anymore because we didn't have a lot of time. But out of the box, it's still a really decent car. You know, as good as almost any of the rest of them, and with a little refinement, I think it'll be much better. But yeah, it's nice. I'm not, from a personal standpoint, I don't especially like the sort of pale yellow cars. I prefer like this yellow, but that's just a personal preference in this case. I haven't looked at the original to see if it corresponds to the original livery that's on there, but it's a nice livery. The wing in it fell off immediately, as experienced right now. And it dropped somewhere, but I think I'm going to file it out, lower the wing a little bit so that it sits deeper in there. It's not as, you know, as accurate as to original scale as it would be otherwise, but it seems like it would be smarter to have it sink deeper in there, and then I'll glue it too. I don't have a lot of wing damage when we're going off on my track. So I, you know, since I stopped using magnets, there's been much less damage in that regard. So it's been better that way. And the only other thing I've been working on is an old MRRC Porsche with an Olifer chassis. Here's the chassis on it. You can see
which
there.
Which MRRC Porsche, the 911 or the 904?
The 908.
Oh, the 908. Oh, okay. Yes, nice. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
pretty
I
car.
love that green front end.
Yeah.
Actually, thinking about using a similar livery on my personal car. I've got some green paint on my 944 for my 944, and I could do the center of the hood and around the bumper and that, and have it look similar. And I love that simple green and white. It's really nice. My personal car is a 944, and it's got enough in there that I could mimic it, and it needs to have the front end work done anyway. So I might just go ahead and do that for real. But anyway, it's a nice car. I'm hoping to get it done this week. Now that chips are available, at least in the US. Oh, and I found the wing. So I will put it on and show you.
Yeah, those things stick up a long way, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I generally do that on a lot of the cars. I'll file it off straight and have it sink deeper in, and it's much less prone to damage that way, especially with real thin runners retainers like that.
Mike, a lot of those Sideways cars actually have a rubber wing alternative available from Racer themselves. Very worthwhile in my experience.
I have one on my Ford GT.
Yeah, they're very, very worthwhile.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, I may do that too. We'll see how long this one lasts because they're prettily painted and they've got the lettering on them and stuff. So, you know, they look nice. So, okay, that's it for me. Anyone else? I see a show of hands or whatever. I have to look all over the place in this thing in order to find everybody. So, okay,
Don't think
everybody's
anyone's
okay.
got a hand raised right now.
Who's that?
I was
Sorry, I
saying that
didn't-
I can't see anyone with a hand raised right now.
Oh, okay. All right, fine. Well, let's move on to the normal club corner stuff then, if nobody else has anything. Anybody got anything? Just raise hands and that stuff. I guess I can start unless,
Mike.
That's
Yes.
Dewann.
Hey,
Yeah.
so what happened to your chassis with the sideways car?
oh, with the sideways car? If you look, you see where the
Yeah.
hole is for the LED for the infrared?
Yeah.
I drilled it too large and I drilled it with a drill instead of using a pin vise. And I split the area at that center
Okay.
part.
Okay.
And that's why I filled it with hot glue because I had to race the thing. So there'll be a better fix coming, at least, and I'll get another chassis to test it more thoroughly. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping to put the video up that I have of it racing this afternoon and see how it is. But it's still a pretty nice car.
Yeah, I mean, so I think if you want to for making the hole for the LEDs, I think you need like a very small, 2 millimeters, I think it will be more than fine. That's what I usually do.
Yeah. Well,
And the other thing is also,
I
Yeah.
don't generally switch to the slotted pod, and I'll angle the slotted chip down. And so you need a wider angle on the LED, otherwise it doesn't count laps accurately, I found. So I try
Yeah.
to make it as wide as possible, but I overdid it.
yeah, that's why I think what I do is I just throw away the pod that come with the sideways car and I use a slotted one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
the front, the center kind of fixing, it's a mess for the chip.
Yeah, on a lot of them, what I do is I will disconnect a chip. Here, I got.
Yeah, okay, you put basically the wire.
I disconnect the bottom part of the chip, and I'm looking for one that I've got that's done that way, so you can see what it looks like. Not necessarily for you, but for somebody else. Yeah, here we go. I will take the door off and mount the hole in there. And then, of course, with that distance, oops, there we go. With that distance with the LED sitting down like that, that takes up the space in between. You mount it a little higher, although it's a little much of the problem for the center of gravity, but not terribly, because the chips are not that heavy and don't contribute that much. So I may switch on. Some of the other ones I've got this done. But lately, of course, the slot or Scalextric chips have not been available. So I've had to sort of stop that. And for some reason, I blew a couple of them lately. And so I had to borrow them, and I've got cars without chips in them.
They
The
are
only
back in
problem,
stock now.
yes, yes.
But if you're using the SP15 chip, the slotted chip, then you can always put a remote sensor on it.
Yeah.
Instead of using the LED that's on the board itself, you can move the board somewhere else and then just mount the sensor right where you need it.
Yeah.
And that might
Yeah.
help you too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even
well-
with the Scalextric chip, I've done that. So when we did the last, the last version is H, I think. So
Yeah.
even in that one, I have removed the DPR hatch from the chip.
Yeah.
And then basically I desoldered the LEDs, I mean the infrared LEDs, and I put it on wire so that I can basically mount the chip closer to the motor inside the pod, and then I can locate the chip where I can locate the LEDs wherever I need to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a pretty straightforward. I mean, if you are already able to kind of put together a chassis with your soldering iron, I think you should be able to kind of desolder the lead from the board.
Well, you're right. I should be able to, but my fat fingers sometimes are not all that good. But at any rate, yes, that's what I should have done in hindsight. But you know, as they say, hindsight is 20/20.
Of course.
So yeah, next chassis I will probably use the remote sensor, and I'll steal a sensor off of one of my blown Scalextric chips that I've got. So yeah,
you can buy those things at the electronic stores too. It's just a regular infrared LED.
Well, there are different kind of frequencies, and that's what you have to.
Mike, if you ever do need it, I can give you the frequency, because I actually worked that one out. It's like a 900 nanometer or something wavelength.
Yeah,
there's a recent thread on the slot forum about that I actually started because I couldn't identify whether to use 850 nanometer or 940. Those were the two I were finding available in the market.
Yeah.
And Grun's got involved in that. Giovanni, he was helpful enough to advise that I think the correct frequency was the 940 one.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's the one that I use. So
that's what I've used as well, the 940.
Any problem with those? So
yeah,
cool.
And they're available easily. It's a 3mm 940 nanometer infrared LED. They're just $1 or $2 each. I mean, they're not expensive. If you can find the slotted ones, the part number is SP32, but don't know that they're in stock anywhere.
And it's not a financially sensible way to actually invest in them, because they are, I think there might be, is there 1 or 2 in a packet, but they're £3 here in England.
Yeah, they're expensive if you buy them with a slotted.
Yeah. You're paying for the head guard and everything.
You're paying for the label.
Yeah,
you can find them on AliExpress or eBay easily. I mean,
yeah.
I get mine from Mouser Electronics, which is a good online electronic store in the US.
Cool. Well, I'll keep that in mind. Although right now I have a fairly large stock of dead chips from my magnet days, so I've got plenty of LEDs lying around.
As long as the LED still works, and it's difficult to tell.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's usually not the LEDs that go when you put too much magnet in them.
True.
So,
however, the way to check an LED is to make sure put 5 volts across it and use your cell phone's camera, because that will show that picks up the infrared, which
cool.
You don't see. But the camera will see it.
Cool. Well, I'll keep that in mind then. Good. Okay, anybody else got Club Corner stuff besides me?
I see Travis on today. He hasn't been around for a long time. How you doing down there, mate?
Hello, mate. How are you?
Good.
I'm not in Australia anymore. I'm in Europe.
Permanently, or?
I can't say yet.
Oh.
That's why he doesn't look upside down.
Yeah.
And it's nighttime. It's not daytime. It's nighttime.
Yeah.
No, cool. Good. I had a bit of a break. Life gets in the way, but I'm back full time, which is good. I wanted to jump on. I've been missing a fair few of these, so I really wanted to jump on.
That's good to have you back, man.
Thanks, mate. I just shut up. I just sit in the corner and listen. This is my chill out time.
Good for you.
Cool. All right.
I see
so
Jim Rose has got his hand up.
Okay, Jim, go ahead.
I don't really have any, excuse me. anything specific club corner, but we're getting ready for our first race at Motown on the big track, January 7th. And we're going to continue to run Group C and F1. We're going to add a pro class to the F1, which will separate drivers. The pro class will be allowed to run a few more modifications, which we're working on the specifics right now. And we're doing the same thing with GT3, which is an added class. It's going to be for NSR, Scale Auto, and Racer Sideways GT3 or GTE cars. There will be a pro class. This one's the rules are going to be the same for both, but we'll have the pro class to separate the drivers. It's very similar to the Electric Dreams rules, with a couple exceptions. We're not going to allow bearings and hollow axles, but other than that, it's pretty much the same.
No small tires either.
It's we are allowing small tires, and there's a specific reason for that. Like I said, no bearings, no hollow axles. We are going to stick to a common power plant. So whatever car you run, you're going to have to run the NSR motor, which is very similar or exactly what Electric Dreams does. The reason we're allowing the 13 millimeter, very bad looking, or whatever you want to call it, is that on that track, it's going to be a real tire war and a development war to run 16 millimeter tires or wheels. If we go to the 13 millimeter wheels, F1 wheels, everybody has them. And it's easier for the store to stock one pre-mount that can be used on either car. So that's the reason behind it. And they do work better, but that's not the primary reason. So that's the reason behind it, partly for the inventory for the store, and partly so you can basically just buy one tire, true it, and run it, and not worry about having to try 10 or 15 different sizes and compounds of tires and wheels in the 16, 17 range. So it's from a practicality standpoint. They don't look really bad, but they surely don't look good. So the first race, like I said, is January 7th. If you want to come up, Dennis, Rick and Walter and probably Bob are coming. I know Rick and Walter are coming. So there's going to be a contingent from Southern California coming up. Tracks open the night before for practice. And so we're looking forward to a great season at Motown. We're getting all of our home tracks together too, and getting scheduling. And so we're trying to eliminate conflicts, which is not possible because right now we've got too many tracks. So we'll see how it goes, but that's what's happening specifically for Motown, because I'm somewhat in charge of that track.
That's great. Our friend Herman James was on the phone to me yesterday, and he's, looking forward to it already. Busy preparing, asking me all kinds of questions about GT3 cars.
Yeah, I tested a Sunday. We had an open test, an advertised open test. Motown does not charge for track time, so you just go in there and race. I thought the cars would be a little bit slower than F1 just because the bodies are so much heavier, but they're about the same. And so I was able to run about a 10th under the track record, the F1 track record with the GT3 car. And
so being an angle winder as opposed to an inline.
You've got a better chassis, but you got a heavier body. So I guess they're kind of somewhat offsetting each other. For the Racer Sideways and the Scale Auto, like I said, you have to run that stock NSR motor. And you can run the slotted or the Scale Auto gears as long as it's an equivalent ratio. So the Scale Auto comes with 1127, which is virtually the same as 1331. And so you don't have to you don't have to change the gear, but it has to be the same ratio within a couple hundreds if you do the math. So that's the class. Open chassis, open pods. We are specifically allowing axle tubes. So we put it in the rules. You definitely probably do want to run one on these angle winder cars because they've got so much torque. They like to chatter on that high bite track. So taming them and getting to run smooth is going to be the issue. So, so that's it for me for now.
Cool. All right. Anybody else got any club corner?
I think pretty much everybody is raced out, certainly in Southern California at the moment after the endurance race that we had. There's been very little action. I walked into Electric Dreams last week and the place was empty. There wasn't a soul around, apart from Kristen behind the counter.
Oh, and
And-
Dennis, when I was down there, may I mention to you, what would the over and under on how many Ford GTs will be on eBay this week? I just sold my third one,
Oh.
one of my backup cars. It went for $130.
Wow.
And so
I
that's
didn't
pretty
even
much
think
what I've
about
got
that.
in it, because it's got the extra chassis and different tires and everything
Yeah,
else. I
yeah.
was kind of surprised it went that high.
Yeah.
Speaking of GT3, I do have a question probably for Courtney and maybe Dennis and whoever. I see in the proxy races that the Ford GT from Sideways is very popular. Is that because the body is lighter, the car is longer, or is there any specific reason why I see so many of them in the proxy races? So I'm thinking about getting one to compete with the NSR. I'm not sure what to do.
Courtney will
So,
have to answer that because I'm not in that proxy.
yeah, so
Tell you
my
from
Ford-
my experience. Go ahead, Courtney.
well, my Ford GT finished third this year, and I think there was a Ford GT won it, and then a BMW second. I was third, but there was like, I think 6 in the top 10. So just looking at the car, it's definitely lower. The wheelbase, I forget what the wheelbase is, but it's a tick longer. And are you going to race this on wood?
Yes.
So I just noticed they have a hard chassis. I just was looking at LEV Hobbies. I'm trying to figure out what to do for next year. And I think I'm going to try the hard chassis. And then as a sidebar, if you notice, when you look at the pictures, there's some little pieces that look like you screw to the chassis to stiffen it up as well. Those do not come in with the stock car if I understand that, at least not that I saw in the kit. So
Those are just set screws that do that, isn't it?
There's a little cap that goes over the
Oh,
top
there's a
and a
cap.
screw from underneath.
that's what it looks like. I have not seen one. That's why I'm thinking about ordering the hard chassis and trying it. With that said, we run everything, or I run a sidewinder in that. I don't know that a lot of people run angle winders in the GT3 proxy, but that you have to modify the inside of the body because it will rub, and you have to be diligent about that because obviously even a little bit of rub is going to throw that car way off. With that being said, though, I'm having really good luck with the NSR AMG Mercedes. Those two cars run really well. And then, of course, I'm still testing the SRT, the Sideways McLaren. And I like the Sideways McLaren better than the NSR because the body is lighter. I think it's lighter by a couple grams.
Yeah,
It's also
again, I
much
think
prettier in my view.
I don't
I was
think it's
also thinking
lower
about
too.
the Scale Auto NSX, but it's kind of hard to come by, and I can't find the chassis anywhere except for maybe pedal slot.
Yeah, I saw the NSX. I don't think it's as low as it, I'm not all about pretty. I want it to go fast. So that's why the Ford is long and low, and that helps it. And then of course I still sanded inside the doors a little bit and inside the rear fenders, and it's only got, and the glass is real light because there's no glass in the back of it. So
I mean, unfortunately, the Ford GT is not a GT3 car, but then, we are looking at splitting hair here, but should not to be allowed in running with the GT3 cars. I mean, it's a GTLM. It's a completely different beast.
Yeah, we're allowing, we're calling it GT3, but we're allowing GTE cars too, including the Corvettes, C6, C7. So we're allowing those GTE cars in.
So
Yeah,
that's been my
GLM
experience. And of course, and the other thing I like about it too is, I don't run any of the, like they have some plastic for inside the grill and inside the air vents. I don't do any of that. I use, sometimes I'll use wet sandpaper or just cardboard, not cardboard. What are the kids' paper called?
Craft paper.
What is it?
Craft paper?
I don't know, just regular paper, but it's black and the kids cut it out and make designs.
Oh.
I have lots of kids. Craft paper, yes.
construction
So-
paper also.
Or construction paper.
Construction, that's it, construction paper. I just cut that out and glue it in because again, it's really lightweight. I mean, it doesn't weigh anything. I don't put the grill in, I don't put air vents in. I get rid of all that plastic, cut all those nubs off.
Yeah, we have to run the body stock, so whatever comes with it has to stay in it, or if it's a white kit, you've got to put it in it.
On the sideways cars, my experience so far has been, I think that the Aston Martin is probably the nicest one of the whole lot. Certainly on my track, which may of course not transfer to another track, but the Aston Martin's worked very well for me.
Yeah, unfortunately, nothing translates to Motown because of the spray glue.
Yeah. But yeah, the Ford will be better, for example, than the BMW, because the BMW is long. It's probably too long. All right. What you got there?
That'll
Courtney?
give you an idea of the wheelbase versus the Mercedes.
Which is which?
This is the Mercedes.
What about the guide lead? Is it?
That's more important. Yeah. Guide to rear axle.
Put
They're
them so the
almost
bottom.
identical. They're almost identical.
Same size.
Yep. Put the two of them together with the chassis facing out. There you go. Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty close. I think the Mercedes is a little bit less.
Hmm.
Talk,
line up
Courtney,
this
so
way.
it pulls the picture up on the screen. Say something.
Sorry.
There you
La
go.
la la. I like to win slot car races. Merry
That's the way. You
Christmas.
do it that way.
And you can see you can see they both, I've trimmed those Scale Auto guides a little bit and I taper them as well.
Slotting plus
And
guide.
Means slotting
or
plus. Yeah.
slotting plus, sorry, slotting plus. Yeah.
I bought 6 of them when I left Electric Dreams last week.
And of course, I really like the what is the red pod? So that's
Our
That's
extra
Scale Auto.
Auto.
that Scale Auto, yeah.
Yeah, Scale Auto. And what's that? A 29K slotted motor? Probably.
No, that is just a 25 Piranha.
Ah.
But of course, I water dipped it and broke it in, and it was one of the best 29s I had. But it cost me on the big tracks, but it's tires, man. I lose sleep over tires, dude.
Don't we all?
Jim, so I finished 3rd with this car, and I don't know that, I'm sure you probably can't see it, but this has got the bubbles in them. This has got the little bubble in them, and it didn't do well at the beginning, but man, it really came on at the end of the year.
I'm not getting the bubbles with the new Evo rubber, but we've gotten to the point where the Evo rubber is great. But that's all we ran at Electric Dreams, and I'm running that up here. And so I got, originally I had trouble truing the Evo rubber; it would ball up. But lately I haven't, and maybe I'm thinking that they've modified the compound and didn't tell anybody, or I don't know what's going on.
Well, my next order is going to include some new Evo tires to try, because the ones that I have are bowled up, crappy things.
Yeah, I
I
ran
think on the
Evo
Electric
grips
Dreams
last
track,
week.
of course, too, is we've done a lot of running with those tires now. Although we do clean the track, so there's probably not that much rubber left down, but with everybody running them, it probably rubbers up very well for that one particular tire.
But you
It's
guys
still
are
true
running
enough.
so running the Evo, you guys don't notice that they are forming up while you're running like marbles around the tires?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Nope.
So you basically just saying that that's maybe they're changing the compound, or you haven't changed anything that you're doing with the tires?
Either we figured out how to do it, and we really haven't done anything different. It's just truing and oiling. We're not oiling as quite as much. But you know, well, the first few sets I had, they would just ball up on the tire truer, and then they'd ball up on the track. And lately they haven't been doing that. So I don't know if NSR has changed the compound and didn't tell anybody, but wouldn't surprise me.
Well, I mean, I've been truing like as normal and no problem at all. I mean, you know, I'm very brutal when I true my tires, and you know, no difference between the Evos and the previous one. But on the track, I noticed that they are collecting a lot of marbles.
Yeah,
And then
and like I said, I had that issue when they first came out, the first 6 months or whatever. I had that exact same issue, but the last 6 months I haven't had it at all.
Not
Interesting.
necessarily anything that NSR do. NSR are at the mercy of their supplier, and at the end of the day, if their supplier is tweaking things, they're not necessarily listening to slot car racers when they do it. They might just be taking a little bit of the expensive stuff out and filling the tire up with a little bit of the cheaper stuff.
Well, that's not the opposite of what I call it, Andrea, or who is the CEO, say that they like to have everything under control, and that's why they do in Italy.
Yeah.
I mean,
do we know whether or not they're actually making their own tires in their factory, or?
Well, I mean, if he's saying that he likes to have everything under control, tires are part of the picture, isn't it?
I can't imagine they're producing their own rubber though.
Maybe they'll not produce their rubber, but I mean, it's not like in China that they change it, do whatever they do down there. I mean, I think that is still, it's still made in Italy, I believe.
I've been playing around with rubber tires on different kinds of cars for 20, 30 years, and I've never seen a tire that stayed the same for its production life, or even batches. They just change between batches. Unfortunately, it's a black art that nobody that competes with the stuff necessarily knows anything that gets to control any aspect of it.
But at the Enduro last week, it was a 20-minute heat in the main. And a lot of the teams were, and every 7 minutes there was a driver change. So there was a track call at the 7-minute mark, but you couldn't touch the car. So you could only clean tires after 20 minutes under yellow flag. But the winning team did not clean tires under green at all. So they ran 20 minutes at a time without cleaning tires. So those tires are working for us now.
Yeah.
I may have to go and try them again. I've been pretty much stuck with the G25 slotteds because they seem to be working the best on the scaly track. Giovanni, you've had good luck with NSR on scaly track, right?
Yeah, so basically I've tested on GT3 cars that the class that we run over here that is kind of, you know, based on the DISCA rules. So I've kind of play around with the 5216 from NSR, which now are NSR Evo. So that's what I use normally. And then I tested a bunch of G25. I mean, the G25 just kind of no glued, no trued, just to put on the tires as they are. And the lap time difference, I mean, G25 a bit slower than NSR, but the difference is it's not huge. And the benefit that basically you don't need to true them, it's just slap on the wheels. It's much more beneficial, and they don't blow up as they do with as they Evo do basically.
I mean, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think for Scaly over there, I mean, the best tires that I've tried so far are the N22. I mean, you can chew them hard, they don't complain, you can oil them, they stay nice. Unfortunately, these are not available anymore, but N22 will be
I love that tire too.
Yeah. Well, you can see on here a little bit what happens after a race. These were minimally trued. It's not showing up real well. There you go.
Yeah,
now you can see
it's chunky. Yeah.
Yeah.
What tires are those?
Those are G25s.
How long
They
would
were
that
not-
do that?
They were not true. They were put on the car, run on a bit of sandpaper to take the molding off, and that's it.
Okay, so what's that gush that you have in the middle of the tire?
It's not a gash, it's raised rubber. It's, here you can see. It's not a hole.
Like just roll off then, Mike, with your thumb tip.
Yeah.
But are you sure that, I mean, maybe picking up other rubber that was laid down on the truck before?
No, I had just cleaned the track before I ran these.
Well, the G25 tire will roll like that quite happily when you're doing any tire truing. And the surface that I believe that they may have been developed for may very well be the polycar track surface,
Yeah.
which is an abrasive kind of hard track that would eat an NSR, I would imagine. No experience speaking, but a very soft rubber might just get eaten alive on a harsh track like that or like Ninko. And it's really showing up to be particularly good in terms of longevity on surfaces like Ninko. I haven't ever run them on Scalextric. I've never run them on polycar, but anything that's quite abrasive, they seem to be able to last, getting on for twice as long as the N compound tires that we speak of from Slotted have done in the past.
Well, I've never had to change tires because they were worn out. You know, most of the races that I do, it's, you know, like a 20-minute to 25-minute race in that range. And
that's fine, Mike. And I speak from the other end of the thing where we run a pair of tires until they're gone. And that, you know, that can be 4 hours. It used to be 4 hours on an N18. You used to be able to get a little bit more sometimes on an F22, but not a lot more. Sometimes less. It depended on how the car was working sometimes. But the G25 has really, really changed the game for us in endurance races. I mean, 8 hours is a lot of running for 8-ish hours is a lot of running for anyone. You're doing 20-minute races. You've got months and months and months of life in a tire. And of course, your
I
track's
have not changed.
nearly as abrasive.
Yeah, I have not changed any of my cars. I tend to rotate the cars through because if I'm bidding them, I want to have different cars on, and I try to keep a balance around there so that you can see different cars how they run. They're all prepared close to the same, so I try to keep them on there, and I have never had to change tires because of a wear problem that it's hitting the track or something like that. Sometimes I'll make a mistake and set it too low in the beginning. I'll take too much out of them and set it too low, and I'll have to replace them for that reason, but never because of wear. So yeah, they wear great. They do in 20 minutes, they'll go off maybe a little bit on the scaly track, but not seriously. Most of the time they'll run better if they're clean. And after a while, sometimes if the guys are having problems, they will clean them in between on a track call or something like that. But for the most part, I don't have any problems with wear, and it's pretty even across the board when you're traveling. There's no problems with the stickiness of the tire being too little at their, the traction is still consistent throughout the race. So, okay. So no more club corner. Anybody else got anything? Okay, well, in that case, the floor is open. Wayne, we got 50 minutes if you got it.
Hey, not this time.
Okay, so
I want to speak to a couple of individuals that are present in the chat. One of them is distinctly off topic, so I might save it until after chat. But I did want to, I just noticed that Henri's joined us, and I wanted to know, did you catch last week's chat, Henri? And did you particularly see the content regarding the Glickenhouse body shell that Nimrod was showing?
I saw half of the show. So we had a little bit of problems in the family over here. My mother-in-law is living here, and she was at the end of her life. So we had a busy 2 weeks. So I've seen a little bit about it. So can you inform me? I saw something about body weight and thinner of the car.
Yes, it seemed that you'd posted a video on your own YouTube channel, and you joined the chat and showed us that the body shell was coming out at quite a heavy weight. And
Correct.
then 2 and 2 really added up together when Nimrod came in the chat and said that the body shell was currently spec'd at a 0.8 millimeter thickness, or I think it was that.
Yeah.
And it had got the potential to be almost half of that thickness, and most of his body shells were. And I thought, that's really going to speak to why you were getting what you were getting.
And are they going to change that?
Well, I think it might be something that you could probably affect in your slicer software. I'm not sure. But certainly Nimrod has the capability to specify it differently. And I know you're in communication with him. If you get back to him and say, can you just make that thinner and thinner, send me one at 0.6 mil and send me one at 0.4, and then you can have a few goes at printing it. And since then, I've also noticed there's a thread started on the same body shell topic in the slot forum.
Okay.
I think you've been in there, have you?
I don't know. In slot forum, no.
Slot forum's got a thread. I only found it this afternoon.
Okay.
About the same body shell, and the other people have had a go at printing it. So
there are some issues there, though.
One of the things he said, of course, is it's a car about 5 meters long, so it should. Yes, it shall be heavy because it's a long car.
Yes, actually, I don't think this topic's got many comments in there about its size. I don't think anyone's got any issue with it.
I did the specs and I divided by 32, and it's almost spot on.
Yes.
But, well, there's going to be some issues with Henri trying to print this much thinner. For one, the 0.8, the 0.4 body shell, most FDM type printers, which use the plastic on the spool, not resin printing, a nozzle width is 0.4. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to do a single layer for an outer body shell. Okay. Henri has run into the problem where with the thinner walls, when you try to print them on a resin, they tend to warp. And that's due to the process of how the thing is actually printed, how it physically does the printing. Now he's had some luck by adding some supports. Trying to print a 0.4 millimeter wall, straight long wall on a resin printer would be a pain in the ass, almost impossible. Now, the other issue, and I'm on my phone, so I can't really show it. If you look at that Glickenhouse file close, and I'm not knocking Vlad here, his files are as good as what's out there. You will see tons of artifacts in it. And a lot of that has to do with the software because it's broken down into facets, triangles, and things of that nature in the CAD software. That comes through when you print it. So if you're going to try and sand that smooth, and you're only starting with 0.4 millimeters to begin with, it's going to be very difficult to get that body smooth and clean, especially in all the nooks and crannies without breaking something. In a little while, I'll fire, I'm still working. In a little bit, I'll fire up my computer and show you what I mean. I mean, Henri just had some decent success with the body he'd been trying to print. He had a minor thing that he's going to be able to repair. But if you followed his videos on his YouTube channel, you can see the issues he had. Now, imagine, I think that body he's trying to print is probably 0.8 thick, and he's having those kind of issues. Now, imagine cutting that in half and trying to print those walls straight. It isn't really going to work well.
Well, I'm not sure, but we might be speaking a little bit at cross purposes. Did you, Henri, resin print your Glickenhouse, or did you FDM?
It's PLA, or how you call it, FDM?
It's FDM, you see, Brian. I did see the thing that you're talking about, the one he's showing, the one he's holding in his hand.
Because
but
I've tried to do it in the, I've got an Anycube, but my Anycube is not big enough for this car.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if you can slice it into two pieces and then put together again. I never did. I have not much experience with that sort of slicer. I know a lot of PLA, but not from resin, for instance. So this one will not fit. So I cannot do nothing with a resin print.
Even if you stand it up taller, Henry, it's not almost straight up. You couldn't print that?
I can try, maybe.
I bet you could. Try it at about a 45, 46 degree angle, which most 3D printers, guys who are in the resin, that's one of those magic angles there that's supposed to work well as far as detail. I can't really give you the specifics as to why it does, but it does tend to work well. I had another question for you on your other resin print. You had mentioned that you broke things trying to remove the supports.
In the beginning with the heavy supports, yes.
Okay, are you removing your supports before or after you're curing the body?
Come again?
Are you curing the body first, then removing the supports?
Oh, no, I'm not curing. I first take them off and then I'm curing them.
Okay. Now you said you were cutting them off.
Sort of, yes.
Okay. One thing you might want to try, and it works quite well, is warm water out of your faucet.
Yes.
Just let it run out of the faucet as hot as it will go and just briefly run the car under it. And what I typically do is I'll do that and I go around the car. So maybe I start at the front. I hold it under water right where the supports meet the body for about a second, break those loose, move to one side, do the same thing, break that side loose, go to the back of the car, same thing, break that loose, far side of the car, break that loose.
Yeah, that
generally,
makes
if you're
sense.
going to break something, it's going to be on the perimeter of the body.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Then flip it over, fill the body kind of like with hot water quickly for a second or so, dump it out, and then slowly peel those off. You'll be amazed at how easy those supports come off with using just hot water. Could also be done with a heat gun, but the water is quite easy to use.
Yeah.
You could also just drop it in a tub of hot water for a few seconds, pull it out, and do the same thing. Works much better.
I've got a question. What density supports are you guys using on the resin prints?
I'm typically running medium supports.
Yeah, I did medium also.
But I've tweaked the depth of the end and the diameter of the end down a little bit from standard. I think standard it's like a 0.8 or something like that, and I think I tweaked it down to a 0.6, and I've changed the depth to like 0.03 or something like that. So I'm not going as I've made
Brian,
them a little smaller and a little shallower than standard.
Brian, you can only do that with the Pro version or also the standard?
You can do it with either version.
Okay.
You can change the tip size. And it's under the support menu. Select the one you want. And it'll show you the tip. You can still leave the long part alone. All you're changing is the very tip. Make the tip a little smaller and tell it not to go quite as deep into the body.
It comes off a bit easier.
It comes off easier and cleaner. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian.
What can I do say about it is that I used for the first time an Tenacious 50% and the normal Anycubic gray. And the flexibility is really wonderful now. Normally it will break at this moment, and I'm now know for sure that you can drive this car on a slot car track.
Very nice.
What was that, Henry? 50-50 mix, was it, mate?
No, 15.
85, 15.
Yeah, 85,
Right.
15. Correct.
Yeah.
Tenacious
Just
is
gives a bit of colour.
it costs a lot of money, but it is worth it.
Now, did you fix that corner? It looks like it.
Sorry?
Did you fix that corner on the wheel well that you had the issue with? It kind of looks like it from here.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
Here you see.
Have you picked up an infrared flashlight yet?
Yeah, I have one.
Yep, that's the way to go. It's amazing how quick you can repair that stuff.
With the normal resin behind it.
Yeah, I just, a lot of times, like you get the little holes maybe from the support.
Yeah.
I take a toothpick, dip that in some resin, dip it on the hole, hit it with a flashlight for 10 seconds, done. Then just sand it smooth.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's welcome. I'm not gonna try the Glickenhouse standing up. You never know. In this
Yeah, you
life.
can see if it'll fit on your build plate that way.
Yeah.
As long as you've got enough height, and I think your any cubic will do 175 millimeters in height.
Yeah, but the Glickenhouse is 70 centimeters. It's, yeah, 15.5, 15.6. We will see.
Yeah, you'll know.
And otherwise, I'll buy a bigger printer.
Well, the slicer will tell you, because if you exceed the parameters of the printer in your slicer, it'll tell you that you've exceeded it.
Correct.
So I'm pretty sure you'll be able to print that one standing up on your printer.
Or you could put it in at a bit of an angle, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If he stands that up on its end, width's not the issue, it's the length. So if he stands it up on its tail or on its nose, he should be able to get it.
Yeah, but if he's like 15 or 20 degrees off of vertical, he hasn't exceeded the build plate size and he's reduced the vertical dimension.
Exactly. Yeah.
We will see. Thank you. And then the advantage is when the thicker Glickenhouse is too thick, like resin, you can work on resin. You can you can make it thinner.
Yeah.
But you can't with PLA. That's a mess. It's getting warm and now it's not workable.
Are you seeing all the artifacts I was talking about, like the angles and everything, even on the flat sides from where how the file was created?
Yeah.
Trying to get that smooth and pretty, especially in those tight corners and nooks and crannies, is going to be a bear. And it would be on resin too, because it's all going to show through. It's all going to come through.
Okay. Next step. Learning.
Okay. Anybody else got anything? Floor is open, so I don't have any topics off the top of my head, except I want to thank Dennis for his suggestion of throwing lead on the bottom of his Mustang that he was talking about, because I went, hey, I could do that to my stock cars. And this week we raced the Carrera stock cars, and they're actually pretty decent. I was really surprised. I was contemplating having to make a chassis or get a 3D printed chassis, and all I had to do is plop enough lead on the bottom, and they're fairly decent to drive. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Dennis.
Oh, okay. That came from, I think, from the Pioneer Mustang that I was working on. Yeah, I just took a whole piece of 032 lead, 2 inches by 1.5 inches, stuck it on the bottom of the chassis. I didn't even bother. Well, I did kind of square up the edges, but I didn't reduce it in size at all, and it works great.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've been doing is I've been playing with those CG slot cars, 3D printed chassis and pods that he's making that fit under the Scalextric Trans Am cars. Talking about that sort of car. And those work really, really nicely.
Are you using the inline pod on them, or are you using the?
No. I use the angle winder or the sidewinder pod that he makes that goes with the car, because then you don't have to cut as much of the interior away. You basically you need to grind away a little bit of the interior, but it's mostly like the back of the seats and things like that. You can leave the full driver in. A little bit at the bottom, but mostly on the back side, because the original cars are all sidewinders anyway. And so now this one, his pod has a 5-degree or a 3-degree angle to it. But they work really nicely. It's a nice little product.
Talking about the Mustangs, did anybody see in store already the Thunder slots?
No, not yet.
Because
No.
they promised me to wear it with Christmas.
Yeah, I think there's been enough problems with Chinese manufacture lately that nobody's got anything that they wanted for Christmas, apart from Tony. Tony got everything he wanted for
Tony
Christmas,
got
right?
all he wanted.
Yeah. No, I mean, like slotted the 512M in the Sunoco colors, that was supposed to be out. That's not out yet. The Chaparral 2F, that's not out yet. There's another DTM, C-Class DTM Mercedes coming with a slightly different body to the yellow one. It has a different part number. None of those cars have arrived yet, and I think a lot of it's just been that there are still production delays in China.
Actually, I forgot
So
to show you
Dennis,
this one.
this is the chassis you're talking about, correct? CG?
That's the Olifer chassis, right?
Oh, God. Oh, except that the pod is CG.
The pod CG, yeah. Now,
Yeah.
That particular pod may not be the same one that he's using, but it looks very similar. Yeah, it looks very similar to the one that he's using in the for the Trans Am cars. It might well be the same one, Mike.
Yeah, this is one that it came out of the kit that I've got for it that did not
Okay.
fit. I have to get one of the Gurney Barracudas.
Yeah.
Or is it? Yeah.
Yeah, because the
I've
chassis,
ordered
that chassis
for it.
doesn't
Now
fit the
it came out with
Challenger.
one for the- I've got a Challenger. I don't have a Barracuda.
Yeah, the Barracuda mounts with with 2 screws up front and 1 at the back, and the Challenger mounts with 4.
Yeah.
So the chassis are not interchangeable, unfortunately.
Yeah, I found that out the hard way.
Yeah, I did too.
So yeah, now they have them now, don't they?
Not that I know
For
of.
the Challenger, isn't that one out?
Not that I know of, but it
Okay.
might be. I haven't checked lately.
Okay. Well, I thought I saw it, but I'll have to double check so I don't make a mistake again.
Mhm.
So, okay, cool. What do you think about the mount on the pod is a center mount, sort of a T-shaped mount like that. And there is quite a bit of slop, well, not slop, but movement in that, in the flexibility in it. Yeah, good. That's the word I was looking for. What do you think? You think that they run pretty well?
I think they run great. The little bit of work that I've done with them has been they work well. But of course, that amount of flexibility at the front is determined by how loose you make the rear screws, right?
Yeah, right.
So and in general, you just want you want a little bit of looseness everywhere. So I don't know that it makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by the flex in the chassis and how much difference that makes. And design wise, what the parameters are is for wood. Everybody says it's got to have a hard chassis with no flexibility or not, but with very little flexibility. And for tracks like mine, where it's really bumpy, people want much more flexibility. And I've had better luck with spring suspension and that kind of stuff to take care of that situation because I have a much bumpier track. I also noticed that the rear end of this is pretty solid, and it's screwed together at the back.
Yes, yeah. The whole drivetrain at the back is pretty good.
Yeah,
and that little clip that goes in the top and holds the bushings in place is really nice.
Yeah.
The only thing you've got to watch is one of the bushing on the gear side. It depends on the type of motor that you're using, but the bushing on the can end may have to be ground away just a little bit, or else it doesn't fit in properly because the inner flange is very, very close to the edge of the motor.
Yeah.
And some of the motors that are quite square in that point touch there, whereas some of the other motors that have a much more rounded end are clear, but I've always had to file off a little bit of the inner flange right there so that they don't catch, because if they do and you tighten it all up, then the axle binds.
Yes, I had to do that. Also, I used the stopper on this side,
Mhm.
and I had to remount a little bit of the edge of it to clear the set screw.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that screw hit the bottom.
Yeah,
there.
the same with the set screw in the gear.
Yeah.
If you have a long set screw in the gear, it touches as well.
It touches the screw mainly.
It touches the screw that
motor
holds the motor in, yeah. But once you've got all of those done, it's actually a very solid pod at the back.
Yeah, it feels pretty stiff itself. If you're not flexing the T part of it at the front.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty anxious to try it. I may try it in the Cougar chassis that I've got. That's a Trans Am.
Yeah.
And see how that works.
Can I make an inquiry regarding that motor pod? Has anyone actually put it on a weigh scale before they put anything into it?
No.
No.
None. I don't think any of us are as weight conscious as you are, Wayne.
No. That's why I turn the camera off so that I can eat cake and biscuits.
I wasn't talking about your weight, but the car's weight.
I know. I was just turning it. No, I've actually taken a Revo slot of tell a lie. A Vant slot, the one that you can never recall. Recently showed on Facebook that they'd made some new motor pods for their chassis. They look a lot like Slot It in terms of having the 4 screws in the right places. And they'd built a twist system in. And I put a post on their Facebook underneath the picture just to ask them how much they weighed. And they're very, very competitive compared to a Slot It motor pod of a similar configuration.
That's
now,
good.
I know a lot of people like to stick weight on their motor pod. And I think that might be a case of horses for courses. I'm not going to say it doesn't work or it's wrong, because it clearly does work. But I do think that might be something that works probably works better in high grip conditions and probably on really smooth, flat tracks, because my personal experience with it is not a positive one. That's all I really care to say. It's only a working theory that every gram matters on the motor pod. And we all like to fit lightweight wheels, lightweight axles, lightweight gears and stuff. And
yeah, that's all rotating mass, though.
I realize that, and then that's why I counter it. But it also takes mass off the pod. I mean, it's all one unit at the end when it's all tied together, isn't it?
Yeah.
And my RC car racing experience suggests that a lightweight pod or a lightweight everything should be, all the way that 1/12 scale cars have developed over the years is that the latest ones, the motor pods, I mean, the motors have changed completely and they're no longer brushed, they're brushless. So lots of things have changed. But the way that the chassis have been designed, the general procession is not towards having any weight on the motor pod, it's all towards reducing it as much as possible. And so if it's right for them, why would it not be right for us, kind of thinking?
Well,
yeah, sure. I mean, you could go to full scale and talk about sprung weight versus unsprung weight, and it's much the same thing.
Well, yeah. And we know it doesn't always, slot cars don't always follow the theory, do they? I mean, clearly, motor pods with weight on can be a good thing. And that's why...
Well, the RC racing doesn't have the slots, so there's, a different factor involved in that.
No, what you're saying there is that it's impossible for a slot car to understeer. But it is possible for an RC car to oversteer. So it is possible to have enough steering or enough going on at the front to almost emulate the slot. So, when a car's optimal, it's perfect at both ends. you've got just the right amount of steering and just the right amount of back to hold on to it.
Yeah. Well, Alan Wilkinson has often said that, set the car up as light as you possibly can and only add weight as necessary, a small amount as you can, because obviously any weight you have to accelerate.
Yeah. And decelerate and get it through a corner.
Right. But in most of these cases, drivability reigns supreme.
It does. And that's where ballast tuning is a viable and ballast tuning is a thing that I have played with, but that was because of it's horses for courses, because of the height of my car and the grip level it was being asked to operate in, and the width of the car, and none of these things were optimal. And so you have to do the ballast tuning. You have to get the CG down low enough that the car won't fall over to begin with, but still give it as much grip as you can. And then disregard the fact that you've lost some power to weight ratio, because at least you can push the car through the corners.
Correct.
Always a compromise.
Wayne, I got hold of a slotted sidewinder pod, the 0.75 millimeter white one, without the ears on it.
I'm going to gamble about 4.6-ish.
It comes out at 4 grams exactly on my little scale.
Oh, good. You see, that's one I've not weighed. It's the angle winder ones that I've been comparing.
All right, 3.95 this time round. Let me do. Hang on a moment. I need to tear that out.
Is that a Sidewinder?
4.12. This one. Okay, and that comes out at 4.12 grams. And then this is the CG pod. It does not have its bushings in it, and that's 3.82. So it's 0.3 grams lighter right now, but then it doesn't have the bushings and the little clip in the back. So by the time that's on, it probably the same or slightly heavier.
I've got a Sidewinder, this pod.
Yeah.
And it weighs 4.29.
Yeah, because that's got the little ears on it for the Evo 6 attachments, the side attachments, which I never use.
And that's another subject of interest, isn't it? It's who was it that made Slotted put the Evo 6 wings on the motorpods? How did that come to be? I mean, it's only happened in recent years. And I'm intrigued to know. And when I meet Maurizio, when I next meet Maurizio, it's one of the things I've got on my list of, can I edge this into the conversation somehow? Because in many cases, I don't find them. Well, I can't speak from a lot of experience. I've got very little experience, but I've started using angle winders motorpods from Slotted because I've changed from using strictly Sidewinder. But the car that I did have with the Sidewinder pod, it had got wings on it, but they were homegrown. Now, the angle winder car I've built and run, or cars that I've built and run in recent times, have not used the outrigger wings. But I have been taping the pod, and I think that what I've been doing is very similar with the tape. Is what I've been doing is very similar to having used the outboard wings on the Evo 6 pods. So I'm going to try and experiment with using them. The difficulty for me is testing time, because the type of tracks that I tend to race on, I never get to test on. So I have to go, turn up with a car that I think is probably the best one I can prepare, and just run it and hope, You have to.
I think
do your work at home.
Yeah, I think that those side mountings are more effective where you have a lot of pod movement in the chassis. But when you run on the tracks the way that I do, which are very smooth and a very high grip, you tend to run with very, very little pod movement anyway. And so I don't know that the side movement, or that the outriggers
have
very
much
effective.
merit for anyone in those circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that I found, if you take out the rear and use only the outriggers, the front two and the two on the outriggers.
Yeah, that for me, that's been a disaster.
It's the car doesn't handle the same.
Yeah.
But I can see that maybe under some circumstances, maybe on Linco track or some other circumstance, maybe that's the way to go.
No, that's what I've done, and it's been not the way to go. And I understand. I think I understand why, or at least I have a working hypothesis. I'm never going to tell you I'm absolutely certain I'm right, but my hypothesis is that because the body shell mounts behind the rear axle, the front to aft distance between the screws on the wings of the pod and where the body shell mounts is such a long way, such a long distance, that when the body shell jumps up and down and applies its forces to the body post, the chassis base plate flexes between where it's being controlled at the motor pod and where the body shell is applying the forces. Now, when you've got springs or washers or whatever you've got, any kind of suspension system that's on the back of the motor pod, well, that's absolutely adjacent to where the body post is. And so you don't get the chassis flex.
That's a possibility. I hadn't thought about that.
When I removed those two and fitted them on the wings of the Evo 6, the chassis flex was all that was really happening. The suspension wouldn't actually move. I was pressing the body shell, peering through the windows, trying to see around the interior because I hadn't got time to take it out. And I could actually see that the springs were not moving.
Wow. Yeah, that's a possibility. It always just felt to me like things are not properly supported. I guess that the best evidence of that is the NSR Formula One, where they give you both. They give you the side outrigger screws, and then they give you the rear, and the car. It's completely different when you're on the rear screws to where you're on the side screws. It's much better with the rear.
So what's your feeling about using all 5 positions instead of, or all 6 positions rather, instead of just the 4, 2 at the front and 2 at the rear?
Are you speaking to Dennis or myself?
Either one.
My answer's really short. I've never run all 6 yet. That's on the thing to do. That's on the things to do list.
And my answer is that if I have done that I generally have the outrigger screws at least a half turn looser than the main 4-pod screws, so that they don't do much. And I just left them in there. So I tend to, I guess, effectively just take them out the equation without taking them out of the body or out of the car.
Well, and the reason I asked that is because Thundersled uses, well, they have a 5-screw pod, and they'll use the side ones as well as the rear ones.
Yeah. Or the MR slot car, which has a 4-screw pod, which is 2, one at the front and one at the rear, and then the 2 side mounts. Now that's a different story altogether, then, right? And
that's true. It's the only one that does that at the moment, and it's very interesting. Got some very interesting potential.
Yeah. I think
again, it's a thing that I'm aware of, but never done yet.
So Dennis, when it comes to that Mr. Slot Car pod, have you? I don't have a Mr. Slot Car. I'd like to have one.
It's MR Slot Car, not Mr. Slot Car. It stands for Mazzetti Racing.
Hang on.
I'll
get it.
What about it?
What
Sorry,
do you think
Courtney.
of that? What do you think of that? Do you think is it worthwhile to maybe adapt one of those chassis to a GT3 car?
Yeah, they're nice. They work well. Yeah, they work well. But
So
you're going to have to, you'd have to adapt the whole chassis, right? Because it's got 2 mountings. The body mounts is 1 at the front, 2 at the rear on all of them. but you know, there's a bunch of different chassis because there's the McLaren, there's the Porsche 911 GT1 Evo. There's what else is
The
there?
Ferrari,
There's
the
the Ferrari 333 now that's just come out.
the Jaguar.
The Jaguar, yeah. Or there's 4 of them.
And upcoming the Shadow. And of course, that's the reason I've never come across anyone else using one, because they just don't make a car that fits into either LMP1 or GT, GT3, GTLM.
At this point, no.
Not at this point. So what you would have to do is adapt a body shell to go onto the MR slot car chassis as an entirety.
Yeah.
Which means finding the correct wheelbase and everything.
Or
yeah, it would be quite
Wayne,
a business, but they're very nice. They're actually very nice chassis.
Wayne,
I
your
have to-
chassis guy, your chassis guy could do us a 3D chassis around a
MR pod.
MR slot car pod.
Yeah.
I'd like to have one of those, by the way.
We're busy. We're still busy. Other projects and things are starting to get in the way of further development, shall I say? But yeah, it's there's so many potential possibilities. And if I was in the 3D printing myself, then I think I would. I mean, you know what I'm like. I don't own many slot cars. I focus on one and I run it again and again and again and again, and change it in between every time it hits the track. And it's always a learning game for me. Until I'm winning. And then I don't have that excuse anymore.
Well, this one's got the suspension on it too. In the front. You can see the next to the guide there, it's got the suspension. However, in this setup, and I haven't tried this a lot, if you put the suspension to the max of its, let's see if I can do this, to the max of its movement, it hits the body.
You don't want that.
Yeah. So, I have to tighten it up a little bit and figure that out. I haven't spent a lot of time with this car because I don't have any matching cars for it. Though I want to get the Ferrari to see how that is comparatively. Not too thrilled about XJ220.
I'm going to put my address in the chat for you, Michael.
Why is that?
I'll help you set it up. I'm a giver.
Okay.
Hey, Dennis, I saw James Cleave's latest video on YouTube. I think it was about, no, it might not be his latest. It might be an old one. Saw a comment on an old video about his Formula car, the steel chassis Lexan body Formula cars. Now, as far as I'm aware, you're probably the most experienced with those that's in the chat tonight. So I'll ask you. The comment was, I noticed that you're not running solid or O-ring front wheels and tires. And the answer was, and the other comment contained the fact that there was a conical aspect to the tire profile, and I knew what that was about, and that was because the tire has to have a width of a given number, but it doesn't have to all touch the track. But James's reply to the fact that the tires were not hard, as in either glue coated or anything like that, was interesting to me, because he said that he thought that the softness of the foam may actually be beneficial in absorbing some of the vibrations that the track would have normally put into the chassis. So what is the norm with the Formula One fronts?
In that particular class, they use those tiny little narrow front wheels, but they have to have front wheels and they have to touch and roll according to the rules. But yes, it's right. Wood tracks are smooth, but they're not smooth everywhere. There are still joints that you have to worry about. And so the softness of the tire probably does help absorb that. Those particular cars are very, very sensitive to all kinds of things. They're not easy things to drive. And
that's the impression I get.
I can well understand that, at the level that he drives, that different hardnesses of tire he would be able to feel differences in the way the car handles.
So what is there a minimum width for a front tire on one of those F1s, Dennis? So how
I
narrow
think
are
there
they?
is, but I'd have to go looking for it to find out what it is. I don't know
Okay.
offhand. On the stuff that I run, on the retro cars, which the retro Formula Ones, it's 0.225 inches, I think, like 6 millimeters.
Yeah,
6
so
or
it's
7
about-
millimeters.
And on the and if you look on the IRRA, which is the East Coast, mostly East Coast racing, there it's 3/8 of an inch, so it's 9.5 millimeters wide at the front.
Oh, that's quite wide.
Yeah, well, that's for aesthetic purposes, you know. That they
Yes,
look
yeah.
at least right. They don't have these spidery little wheels hanging out the front
And
when you've
are
got.
they mandated to be sponge then, or can you fit rubber as an alternative?
Again, I would have to check the rules to find out about that. Let me see if I could find those rules. I'll be back.
It doesn't matter. The regulations don't matter. What I'm kind of inquiring is, what do people generally do?
They use what they can buy, and so the guys who make those wheels for those ISRA type cars, the steel cars, most of those come out of the Czech Republic, and so it'll be Vladimir Horky and Recek and a couple of others who make those, and they make them with the hardness that works best on their tracks, and everybody uses those.
But they'll be foam, yeah?
Yes, it's foam. It's a hard foam. It wouldn't be a solid rubber. That gets too hard. Any kind of solid rubber is too hard straight away. I've tried that at one stage. I found what the ice hockey guys or the hockey guys call a practice puck, which is a slightly softer, solid rubber than the rocks that they use for games. And that practice puck, I used to cut it up into small pieces and actually make front tires out of it. But it was firstly too heavy, and secondly just too solid, too hard. It just didn't work.
You see, this speaks back to the concept that Mr. Slot Car have built into MR Slot Car have built into the front of Mike's car there, where there's some softness to the front axle, where most plastic slot cars just have a solid grub screw bound with a solid tire, which is got no grip whatsoever, until of course the GT3 proxy we start seeing cars with rubber tires that aren't gripless, and they are being requested to be cleaned. And now we've spoken to Chris in the past, and he's given us one working theory about what might be happening and why that could be beneficial. But I just wondered whether the suspension aspect that Mike's got in his car might have some merit for myself on the bumpy plastic tracks.
It might have on the bumpy plastic tracks. I don't know that it would on the and it might if it's a slightly bumpy wood track, you know, like if there's a bad joint somewhere right in a braking zone or something like that, it might help you out. But other than that, I'm not sure. You know, personally, I'm not that big of a fan of a front suspension in a slot car, but you know, it does help you absorb some of bumps in a straight line. But as soon as you get into a turn, it starts to allow the front of the car to roll, and that means that the guide's not straight up in the slot anymore.
That's right, and that's the fear, isn't it? You don't want the angled guide, otherwise that starts to climb out of the slot.
Not only that, but it starts to lose contact as well, depending on how close you are. Anyway.
Oh, that's interesting, since I've had really good luck with the suspension. In fact, that's the main difference between the Aston Martin and the 720S that I raced against Monday, is that the 720S has suspension in it. And
are you talking front end suspension? You're talking pod suspension?
No, I'm talking pod suspension.
Pod suspension, different story.
Yeah.
We were comparing front tire hardness against front suspension potentially, and one emulating the other, and whether or not there was any merit in it for bumpy tracks like mine and yours to some extent, Michael. It's, you know, you're still sectional.
What
Yeah.
I do like about the front end, even the stock front end on the MR slot car, is that you can change to stub axles very easily, and
Yeah.
and then you can do two things. You can actually start fiddling with the camber of the wheel if you wanted to,
Yes.
but at least you can have independently rotating front end, which is
Yeah,
really nice.
I have not spent enough time adjusting and playing with that front suspension to give any ideas on how well it works. I can say that it did make a difference in the way the car felt. This is one of the easiest to drive cars I've got on my track. I mean, I can push it to its very limits. They're not as quick as the other cars that I've got, but I think the potential there is much greater than some of the other cars. And I don't know if it outweighs the complication, but you're right. You can play with just a couple of screws through the bottom. You can play with the angle that you've got the separate axles in the front and everything. It's really, it gives you a lot more to play with, and of course a lot more to screw up.
Of course, that's always the way. So by the very stint that you've got, you just said it for me actually, separate a split front axle. You've obviously got independent front wheels that at the same time, haven't you?
Yeah. So yeah, I like it, and like I said, from a driving standpoint, it's really nice.
If it was mine, Mike, I think I would take what you've got, which has obviously got like excessive amounts of suspension movement in the front there, and I would knock that right down to like 0.5 millimeter, and see whether that comfort that you get from the drive is still there, or whether it's got away.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I'll maybe try and do that.
That's your homework.
Yeah, well, I have literal homework that I'm doing. So
yes,
but that's an idea. I should give that a try if maybe I can do that. So okay.
Do you know if there's a chat next week?
I don't know. Greg's not here to ask.
I just wondered if he said anything at the beginning that I missed.
No, I don't know that was Greg here at all today.
Yeah, no, he's not. He's driving. He's driving over the pass, and he designated me as the moderator. So you're stuck with me. Sorry.
Yeah, even John Kitt's not on today, but he was earlier.
Yeah,
on.
he had to leave early too. So so anyway, it is
we'll find out in the forum.
Yeah, I think last year we didn't have one, but
yeah, I think he gave us a week off last time.
Gave us a week off.
Not that we asked for it. I, for one, would not. I mean, this is my Wednesday, for cripe's sakes. So, and this all fascinates me. So, but we're approaching the 2-hour mark now, so I'm going to shut the recording down, and we'll see if it works or not.
We just wasted another 2 hours.
Yeah, really.
So everybody can wasted another 2 hours talking to a bunch of old farts who play with little cars.
I only wasted an hour and 45 because I was talking to Joachim for the last 20 minutes on the phone.
I saw your lips moving there and wondered what the hell was going on.
Yeah, I was talking to Joachim.
Okay. Has he roped you in to go to Italy with him next year?
Has he what?
Has he roped you into going to Italy with him next year?
No, I just don't feel like going that far to race a slot car.
Oh, okay.
It's a long way. I've traveled all my life for business. I don't like to travel.
Yeah.
If that race was in California or someplace fairly close, I'd do it in a heartbeat, but I don't want to go that far.
I think